In 1867, Russia sold Alaska to the United States for a mere $7.2 million, which equates to less than 2 cents an acre. So, why did Russia decide to part with this extensive and valuable territory for such a low price? This fascinating historical event called the Alaska Purchase has intriguing stories about why Russia decided to sell Alaska and why the United States ended up buying it unexpectedly. In this video, we'll explore the reasons behind Russia's decision to sell Alaska. We'll also look at how the United States emerged as the purchaser, rather than another colonial power such as Britain, and how this event shaped the two countries' destinies. Make sure to stay with us until the conclusion as we reveal the unexpected twists and grand events surrounding this historic transaction, which reshaped the North American map. The Alaska Purchase, which occurred in the latter part of 1867, over 150 years ago, still resonates throughout history due to its intriguing blend of factors. This transaction was shaped by an obvious array of influences and circumstances. Let's explore the exact reasons behind this important event and investigate what continues to arouse our curiosity. As the 1860s were coming to a close, the United States was still recovering from the aftermath of the Civil War and was fighting with the challenges of Reconstruction. But Secretary of State William Seward saw the purchase of Alaska as a way to unite the country behind a common goal of expanding its territory. While the 1848 Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo had already fulfilled the concept of manifest destiny by adding substantial land to the nation, Alaska presented another opportunity for territorial expansion. Overall, there was widespread support for the acquisition of Alaska among the American public, although a vocal minority vehemently opposed it. However, the dissenting voices have echoed prominently in history, giving rise to the nickname Seward's Folly. Because Alaska was considered too distant to be valuable, not worth even a small amount of money. Many believed that the funds should be used to help reconstruct the nation following the Civil War. This purchase was somewhat unique, because it marked the first time the United States had acquired land outside the contiguous mainland. It raised questions about whether the United States was heading toward becoming an imperial power. The debate over this issue intensified with President Ulysses S. Grant's unsuccessful attempt to annex Santo Domingo in the 1870s, and then the annexation of Hawaii and the acquisition of territories following the Spanish-American War in 1898 firmly established the United States as an imperial power. In the end, Seward's Folly and the purchase of Alaska played a big role in the economic, commercial, and strategic successes of the United States in the subsequent decades. But what really led to Russia's decision to abandon its foothold in North America? And what circumstances contributed to its acquisition of Alaska in the first place? Russia's decision to sell Alaska to the United States stemmed from several key factors. Firstly, Russia found itself in dire need of funds following its disastrous defeat in the Crimean War, which depleted its financial resources. The exploration and settlement of Alaska by the Russians began in the early 18th century, with the first permanent settlement established in 1784. Interest in the region was piqued after Vitus Bering's 1741 expedition, even though Bering himself did not survive the journey. His crew, however, returned with sea otter pelts and stories of the new lands they had discovered, sparking further interest. The availability of animal furs, especially sea otters, attracted Russian settlers to Alaska, and they quickly dominated the indigenous Aleut population, forcing many Aleuts into the fur trade. Tragically, European-introduced diseases took a devastating toll on the Aleut population, with as much as 80 to 90% succumbing to these diseases. Despite the fur trade being a primary economic driver for Russian settlement, Alaska remained sparsely populated, with only a few hundred Russians residing there at any given time. The profitability of the fur trade was limited due to the exorbitant transportation costs associated with the remote region. As Russia observed the westward expansion of its competitors, the United States and Great Britain across the American continent, they grew concerned that British or American settlers might eventually overrun Alaska, similar to what had happened during the Texas Revolution in the 1830s. This concern intensified with the California Gold Rush of 1849 and the subsequent influx of settlers. Russia feared that if gold were discovered in Alaska, it would be impossible to prevent a flood of foreign prospectors. After the Crimean War and its financial strain, Russia initiated discussions about selling Alaska to the United States. Although the United States was receptive to the idea, negotiations were temporarily halted due to the American Civil War. Alaska was purchased from Russia by the United States in a historical transaction that occurred on March 30, 1867. However, the negotiations leading to this purchase were resumed following the conclusion of the American Civil War. Russia's readiness to sell Alaska was evident, but what were the main reasons behind the United States' interest in buying the territory? Secretary of State William Seward was the reason, who strongly supported expansionism and played a main role in facilitating the acquisition of Alaska. Seward and Russian diplomat Edward de Stockel successfully negotiated the deal, leading to the United States' purchase of Alaska. The treaty was ratified by the Senate on April 9, 1867, and President Andrew Johnson signed it into law on May 28, 1867. The Alaska Purchase was a momentous event that added nearly 591,000 square miles of territory to the United States. The cost of this vast land acquisition was just $7.2 million, approximately 2 cents per acre. It stands as the second largest addition of territory to the United States, surpassed only by the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. Despite some initial opposition, with critics derisively referring to it as Seward's Folly and other creative names, historical studies suggest that most newspapers and Americans either supported the Alaska Purchase or remained neutral. Supporters of the deal recognized the expansionist potential and the future strategic value of Alaska. The official transfer of Alaska from Russia to the United States took place on October 18, 1867. An unintended consequence of this transfer was that Alaskans lost 11 days from their calendar year due to the difference in calendars between Russia, Julian calendar, and the United States, Gregorian calendar. Additionally, Alaska moved from the European side to the American side of the international date line as part of this transition, which also contributed to the loss of days in the calendar year. However, for 30 years following its acquisition, Alaska received minimal attention from the United States, with governance ranging from military, naval, or treasury authority, or even periods of no apparent governance whatsoever. In an effort to enforce U.S. mining regulations, the United States established a civil government in 1884. Critics had initially mocked the acquisition of Alaska as Seward's Folly, and called it a silly mistake because they thought Alaska was just a frozen place with nothing useful. But surprise, it turned out to be a jackpot. So after buying Alaska, it sat quietly for a long time. No one really knew what to do with it. But then, slowly, people started moving there. And guess what they found? Gold, not just in one place, but in 3: Klondike, Nome, and Fairbanks. Gold fever hit, and lots of people rushed in. These gold rushes led to a population boom in the territory. Beyond gold, Alaska was found to be rich in other valuable resources, including vast reserves of oil and a thriving fishing industry. The discovery of these resources played a huge role in transforming Alaska's economy, and also had significant implications for the United States on the world stage, especially in terms of its involvement in global oil markets. Furthermore, Alaska's strategic importance became increasingly evident over time. The Alaskan Islands brought the United States closer to Asian markets, facilitating trade. The U.S. military established numerous bases in Alaska and its Pacific Islands, which proved vital during World War II and for operations such as the bombing of Japan. In the end, Alaska went from being a distant place to becoming the 49th state in 1959. So even though they once called it Seward's Folly, it turned out to be a pretty smart move. Alaska's journey from a remote territory to statehood in 1959 shows the enduring significance of the Alaska Purchase. While Seward's Folly remains a part of historical terminology, the acquisition orchestrated by Secretary of State William Seward was, in retrospect, a shrewd and forward-thinking bargain that greatly benefited the United States in terms of resources, strategic positioning, and economic opportunities. The Alaska Purchase was a significant event in American history, and it was shaped by a variety of factors, including Russia's financial need following the Crimean War, its concern about the westward expansion of the United States and Great Britain, and Secretary of State William Seward's support for expansionism. However, the Seward's folly has proven to be a far-sighted and beneficial decision, as it not only enriched the United States, but also shaped the future of Alaska and its people in profound ways.